All right, if you want to read this article and check out the links contained within it and the videos and images, you can go to justinstallman.com/A23. Can money or things allow you to be more happy? What moving has taught me. For the past few days, we've been moving from our 2-bedroom apartment of the last 6.5 years. It's funny, as time goes on, I become less and less attached to memories and things. Somebody asked me recently if I was nostalgic for any reason. The answer was absolutely not. I'm always looking forward to what's next. I think it's a shame when old friends get together and talk about old times and share old memories. I'm more interested in what's happening right now and where I'm going. There's no sense in focusing on the past unless you can learn from it. Your environment affects you. Where we live has a direct impact on not just our health physically, but it also affects how we see the world. It affects our outlook on life, and over time has the potential to dramatically shape what kind of existence we're able to carve out for ourselves. People often say to be careful what kinds of friends you make or what kind of people you surround yourself with. But I believe the same could be said for where we live or what job we have. Do you live in a neighborhood that has toxic people in it? Do you live next door to people who don't share the same values as you do? Do you live in an area where people aren't motivated to make their lives better? This is the case where we used to live. We lived in an area where many of the neighbors we had were living off the government. They would spend the better part of their days drinking beer and smoking on their front porch. Cars would be on blocks parked on the front grass. Maybe you can relate. Regularly, you would hear car alarms going off, police sirens, Harley-Davidson motorcycles going by, helicopters. We call them ghetto birds. Searching for criminals, diesel engine trucks. We lived on a busy 4-way stop on the way to a beach and a popular school in our area. You'd hear trash trucks, work vehicles, bicycle riders, scooters, skateboarders, and everything in between. It wasn't uncommon for people to leave mattresses or shopping carts and office chairs or even broken down cars on the side of the streets. I was a fish out of water living there. It's not the right thing to do to leave trash all over your front yard. We are motivated people wanting to help infuse change into the world. Living in this kind of broken down environment just wasn't conducive to who we were or where we were going in life. Perhaps you feel like this. Maybe you're dealing with the same set of challenges, or maybe they're slightly different. Regardless, you feel the need to move on. You know you don't belong where you are. You see the people around you, and if you're not careful, you'll end up becoming them. It's a slippery slope. A few wrong choices and you never know where your life could end up. Here are some of the things I've learned from living in a place that was my greatest nightmare and my greatest teacher. Number 1, patience. After about 6 months of living in our last place, I was ready to move. It was too loud, and the people that lived around us were not the type of people I wanted to associate with. Everything within me was desiring to leave. I had this feeling many times in different situations in life with jobs and other situations. It seemed as though as time went on, I grew more and more impatient. My tolerance levels were getting less and less. The smallest things would either annoy me or anger me. I began judging people and making up stories in my head about who I thought they were and being upset that I had to be subjected to the noise and chaos they created around me. I was becoming somebody I wasn't, and I knew it. I was becoming angry, jaded, and judgmental. I began to hate people. I hated strangers I didn't even know. I knew I was becoming angry and upset. I could feel it, but it wasn't me. I knew it because when I would remove myself from that environment, I would instantly be happier and my joy would come back. By default, my internal nature was happy, but I just couldn't let that side of myself manifest because I was constantly on edge. If I were talking to my wife in our kitchen, I'd be waiting to be interrupted by Harley-Davidson motorcycles that would literally shake our walls. After a year or so of living there, we realized it just wasn't working. We looked around, but we just couldn't afford any other options. We were looking everywhere, even out of state. The median home price in Orange County is $660,000, and it was $790,000 in the city we lived in, San Clemente. So it was a renter's market. Routinely, we'd see studio apartments or 1-bedroom apartments starting at $1,900 and going as high as $2,500 a month for a studio. We lived in a 2-bedroom apartment and were getting an incredible deal. We just felt trapped and stuck. We were just starting our business and running that full time, and Kate was overcoming health issues from working 17 years as a hairstylist. Money was tight. We hated where we were living, but we had to stay there and endure. We felt like we had no options. So sometimes patience is the answer. For us, we knew we just had to hold tight no matter how much we hated our lives, where we lived, or who we were becoming. We worked on ourselves and our own psyche as much as we could. We'd read self-help books, meditate, get out and go on long walks and everything in between, but there is a limit. Knowing when to move on. A lot of self-help gurus and spiritual teachers will teach people that they need to simply restructure their thinking about what it is that's bothering them. Once this is accomplished, according to them, the person should more easily be able to accept what their current situation is. Now, to a degree, I believe that. Don't get me wrong, it's important to do your daily spiritual practices. For me, this includes daily qigong, meditation, reading empowering, uplifting books. I just finished Loving What Is, by the way, which I highly recommend. Affirmations, breathing exercises, and generally focusing on the good we encounter in life. But there's a reason why Oprah lives in Montecito, California, and why Deepak Chopra lives in Carlsbad, California, both majestic and beautiful spots. And there's a reason why other self-help spiritual teachers live in nice, quiet places. The only person I can think of that forsook a comfortable life and lived well below her desires was Mother Teresa or Jesus. There's no doubt that we all must do the spiritual work to learn how to overcome situations we don't like. That is the foundation, but in my opinion, that can only take you so far. No matter how much spiritual work Byron Katie does or Tony Robbins does, if you were to punch them in the face unexpectedly, their first reaction would be anger. It's just part of being human. Now, it's possible that after they get angry, the spiritual work they've done would kick in and take over, whereas with other people, they would remain angry. That's where spiritual work can become very helpful. But regardless, their first reaction would be anger. It's what makes us human. Being stuck in physical bodies forces the invisible, eternal part of ourselves to be infused with the material. These two are inextricably linked. So that's why our environment has an impact on how we think and how we feel. What we do with that depends on the spiritual work that we do. Do we let it go, or do we hold on to it and allow us to make us bitter? Each person has the ability to take their spiritual work to a predetermined level in their own lives. We should focus on the spiritual work while at the same time realizing what makes us happy and moving in that direction. Maybe it means quitting a job, moving to a new house, breaking up with a girlfriend or boyfriend, or simply getting a new car. There were so many times when I was mad, I was frustrated and angry living in our old house that I told myself that God has me here to learn a lesson. Maybe He wants me to be more patient. Maybe He wants me to be more kind and loving. So recognizing that, I actively leaned into things and I needed to learn these things, and I recognized that. But with that said, it's up to us to move in the direction of happiness. They say that money can't buy happiness. I agree with that, but isn't it interesting that you don't see many millionaires saying that, just poor people? What I do believe is that there were so many little annoyances that made life harder and would make me upset. Here were just some of them. Not having a garage, having to climb upstairs with groceries, we lived upstairs, not having a dishwasher, a parking space, or even our own laundry machine, having very little counter space in our kitchen, not having a backyard, having extremely loud neighbors, living on the corner of a busy four-way stop, and many more. I realized it might sound like I'm complaining and that people have much less than we did. Don't get me wrong, I'm always grateful for what I have and what I did have. What I had in our old apartment was my greatest teacher. But having money can remove the things in your life that make life harder and more annoying. This has definitely been the case with me. I can say that I was never an angry person. My default state was happy. It's just that I wasn't able to feel those feelings because I was constantly upset. Learning what makes you happy helps you to be able to figure out what makes you upset. Money will not magically infuse happiness into you, but it can remove the things that make you unhappy. So with that said, doing the spiritual work is the foundation to all of this. I don't believe the spiritual work itself can make you happy any more than giving you $1 million can instantly make you happy, but it helps. Having money and doing the spiritual work can be a recipe for happiness. A deep appreciation. We've only been in our new place now for 4 days, and I can tell you I'm beaming. Every day I'm more and more appreciative of what we have. I'm humbled, thankful, and grateful for where I get to live. All of the little annoyances have been removed, and I feel like my default state again is happy. With every up, there's a down. With every black, there's a white. Everything exists in contrast. If I didn't have the experience of the last 6.5 years of hating where I lived, I know I wouldn't be nearly as appreciative as I am now. It is important to have contrast. It's the contrast that allows us to experience the difference between two situations. And appreciation is all about perspective. Humans are interesting creatures. We all get comfortable and settled where we're at and then start becoming discontent. I remember living in Africa, Europe, and poor parts of South Pacific. And how I was living at our old house would have seemed like a dream compared to my days traveling around the world. Humans get comfortable. It's just the way it is. I was always appreciative of what I had, but I knew I wanted more, and I knew that changing my living environment would remove what was making me upset. Letting go of attachments. This seems to be the overriding theme of my life. I'm constantly learning how to get rid of the things that hold me down. I've experienced this with ideas, opinions, physical objects, people, and situations. I've learned through this move that I hold on to lots of things that have sentimental value. I somehow think that the object I want to hold on to has magical powers. Letting go of everything, I can say, is one of the most liberating things I've ever done. It's kind of like a fun game, actually. Every day, I look for more things to lose attachment to. I've thrown away lots of items that I would normally want to keep. I'd want to keep them because they had some sort of sentimental value, like a yearbook or a gift from my mom, or I felt like I didn't want to buy it all over again. Recently, we threw away our beloved Breville juicer because it was very old and barely working. We could have gotten more use out of it, but it was on its last legs. Ordinarily, I would have wanted to hold on to it because we juice every day, but because I didn't want to spend another $300 just to buy a new one. What I realized is that I'm holding on to something because I felt like God or the universe wouldn't bless me financially enough to be able to afford a new one. I just refuse to live in a state of lack because there's always enough. The act of letting go seems to allow more cool stuff to come into your life. So now I'm awaiting for the money to come in to buy a new one, or I'm sure we'll get gifted one from a friend. These things happen to us all the time. It seems to happen more often when we let go of things, whether they be physical or emotional. Conclusion. I don't believe that money or, quote, things can make people truly happy. It's just not the way we're designed. Happiness must come from within. Happiness is an art and it should be studied. We can actually work on becoming more and more happy and joyful in our lives. In fact, schools should be teaching the art of happiness. Fundamentally, we're all wired in different ways, and doing spiritual work and emotional work to improve ourselves should be a big focus of our lives. We all must work on being happier. But like I said before, there's a reason why monks live in peaceful caves and priests live in quiet cathedrals. There's a reason why people go to the mountains to hike or to the beach to surf and get away from the stresses of life. The environment where we currently find ourselves does have an impact on how we think, how we feel, and how happy we are. No amount of spiritual work or, quote, loving what is can make you okay with a horrible situation. Along with doing the work, sometimes we just need to remove ourselves from the situations that make us unhappy. That was a big struggle for me to come to this conclusion. I wanted to think that I could will myself to becoming happier. I thought I could do enough spiritual work to be happy in the midst of a stressful home environment. But you know what? Sometimes we just have to cut the things out of our lives that make us unhappy and chalk it up to this just being human nature. It's the human experience. I'm not ashamed to say that moving into a nicer area has had a direct impact on my happiness. It might not be the source, but it has been extremely helpful to regain my default state of happiness. So instead of beating yourself up for not being spiritually evolved enough to thrive in your current situation, why not just cut out the things in your life that are making you unhappy? It worked for me, and I think it might work for you also. So if you have a comment, or if you want to check out the links, articles, or videos in this article, head on over to justinstellman.com/A23 and leave a comment and share.